Thank you, Jim. We have apologies for absence from Councillor Foster. Thank you. Anyone got any declarations of interest?
The birthday be late.
Yeah. Minutes of the last meeting, everyone happy with them? That brings on to item 4, which is the draft linked mineral and waste local plan. You see the presentation, hopefully it work. Did you want? Oh, yeah, you can see there. Okay,
We're just in Norway, not the other way around.
This isn't,
it's not the right one.
you're doing the minerals and it's the minerals plan now. That's going to be a long slide there as well.
Other than that,
Other than that,
right.
are we doing, sorry, which one are we doing? Are we doing the resource and waste or are we doing the
Draft linked
performance?
mineral and waste.
Yes, so that would be Philip Fontaines. He's not joined us.
You're sticking on speaker, just hold them up.
Can we invite him to join? We sent him a link. Asked him.
Yeah, I think it was the excellent.
Yeah, Hi, Philip, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so just whenever you're ready, just make a start.
Do you want me to start first? Are you happy for me to speak or?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Brilliant. Hi, everyone. My name is Phil Wadsworth. So I work in the policy team. So I manage the policy team at Lincolnshire County Council. One of our tasks is to lead on the preparation and implementation of the joint minerals and waste plan for Lincolnshire. So this document is setting out how we will manage waste in the future in a planning context, as well as minerals extraction and restoration. So as you may be aware, we recently went out to consultation on our preferred approach to the planning of minerals and waste over the next 15 years up until 2042. So the consultation went out on our Let's Talk Lincolnshire webpage, so that's our engagement platform, and the consultation took place over 8 weeks and finished on the 24th of September, on the Tuesday, the 24th of September, and we've received over 200 responses, between 200 and 250 from a various number of stakeholders, including statutory bodies, like the Environment Agency, Natural England, Highways England, and so on, as well as from local planning authorities, environmental groups, and of course, parish and town councils and individual local residents. So we've had probably twice as many representations as we had at previous stage. And we're in the process of reviewing those and collating all of the comments with a view to then taking the draft plan through to the next final formal stage, which is when we will submit the plan to the Secretary of State. The general approach in the minerals and waste plan is that we are not proposing to allocate any new waste management facilities. We're very much relying on our existing network of facilities to meet the identified needs across Lincolnshire over the next 15 years. So, the intention is to provide a flexible approach to how we identify future opportunities through utilising brownfield land, particularly employment land, and or existing waste management uses or sites. In the first priority would be to bring forward future waste facilities on existing employment land within the main urban areas of Lincolnshire, and those main urban areas include Lincoln, main market towns, as well as some villages in the rural areas where although the population is sparse, some of these villages may well need to be we need to provide household waste management facilities and so on in the future. So it's within that framework in which we would assess development plan applications that come forward. The evidence on which the plan is based and the waste management capacity needs have been calculated are based on an assessment that was undertaken in 2021, and that assessment and the details around that, including municipal waste, commercial and industrial waste, hazardous waste, agricultural waste, and commercial and construction, excavation and demolition waste. It covers those core waste streams, and the results of that are showing that we don't have a capacity gap over the next 15 years. However, just to make you aware that it is our intention to update the capacity assessment ahead of the next stage to take account of the government's revised recycling recovery targets, which obviously post-date the 2021 version, and particularly around food segregation. We also aware that the National Planning Policy Framework, the new update to that has been out to consultation, and the government are intending to increase the growth, housing growth or rates of housing growth across Lincolnshire. So most, if not all, the authorities will have to identify more land for housing and other uses, employment and commercial uses and so on. So that means we're going to have to take account of any new revised projections in how we then calculate future needs. So we are going to be commissioning that work over very shortly. So that's really where we're at the moment. There are a series of policies in the plan around how we'd assess waste management facilities, including things like impacts, so amenity, odor, visual impacts on the setting of heritage buildings, protecting areas of important landscape and nature conservation value. There's policies around how we would ensure environmental net gain, so particularly biodiversity net gain on sites at least 10%, and so on and so forth. So there is a wider policy framework within which we would determine the suitability of waste management facilities. So to ensure that appropriate environmental safeguards are in place, that sites have got good access to the transport network, particularly public rights of way, that sites can be accessed by public transport, by cycle and by foot. And so we are. So the plan really is there to try and ensure that the waste management services and facilities are located in the most sustainable places, and that we've ensured that those facilities are include appropriate climate change mitigation and adaptation measures, so we can contribute towards net zero obligations. So that means the way in which it's designed, the layout of development, so that we can maximize its efficiency, that where possible, that renewable energy sources can be provided on site, or at least there's a connection to, for example, heat networks within the local area. So there's quite a lot in the plan. It's quite a long document, but you can view it online, either on our website, which is Lincolnshire .gov.uk, if you type in waste and minerals planning, or as I said, on the Let's Talk web engagement tool. So you're able to have a look at not just the consultation document, but all the evidence that goes behind it, including the waste management capacity assessment. So that's really my focus has been on the waste side, but of course there is also an element around the minerals, but that's obviously, so you're aware that it covers both. I haven't really, that's my summary of what about the plan. If you've got any questions, feel free, and try and answer them the best as I can. But yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Philip. Has anyone got any questions on that side of things? Good. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Tom, Philip. Appreciate that. It's David Steels from North Stephen. Just a question about the focus of the plan. Does it exclusively look at waste within Lincolnshire, or does it take account of waste that might come in and out of the county, both sort of waste that might be disposed in the county that comes from outside, and waste we might export?
Sure. I mean, the plan is attempts to address both sort of twin pillars of sustainable waste management, the proximity principle and self-sufficiency. So the vision is around seeking, to become self-sufficient as far as we can in the management of waste, to reduce movements across boundaries. However, we accept that these cross-boundary movements will continue, but what we're doing is to try and limit those as far as we can within our powers to do so. And that involves engaging with, other authorities, for example, Nottinghamshire, where we know a lot of our waste does get sent, or vice versa, and also wider field. I mean, waste gets sent from Lincolnshire to far corners of the country, because but what we do is that wherever there are.
Philip, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We've just had a power cut at LCC, so I'm talking via the laptop. So we'll be with you shortly.
Okay, I'll hold on. Thank you.
What's really the skating,
Let's see here.
yeah, he's happy then. That's simple.
Last for me, and those degree apprenticeships, I was ready to try and talk to anyone. Used a few chicken nuggets to go in the bin. My daughter doesn't eat in turn 12 a couple of weeks ago, and he's clearly hit teenage years early, and he's just eating us out of house. The boys now full.
Still with us, Philip?
Back of mine, you know.
Over to you, Iris. Hi, Philip, can you hear us at all?
I can hear you fine. Are you all back now?
Thanks for the answer. I think you answered the question. Has anyone got any other?
Chairman, could just I asked a question around the timeline, because I'm struggling to get onto your website to understand what's your timeline and how transparent are you going to be with the consultation responses from your stakeholders in reference to the final adoption of the strategy?
Sure. And that the timetable for the local plan is on the website. It's set out in what's called the local development scheme. It's what all authorities in the country have to produce when it's called the local development scheme. That sets out our timetable for the preparation of the plan. Though it's worth noting that the actual timetable is now out of date. There was a delay in getting the plan through the various approval processes. So in the consultation also was extended by 8 weeks. So because of that, and also because of potential impacts of PERDA and elections next year, which means that the timetable will change, and we're going to be updating it in due course. And so that it's likely that the plan will be delayed slightly, because at the moment we're planning to this next stage will end up taking place towards the latter half of next year rather than when it says, which is the early part of next year. So what will happen next is, as I briefly mentioned to you earlier, that the next stage is what's called the publication stage, when the actual final draft will be out to 6 weeks consultation, during which all comments that are raised on the final draft plan will go to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State will then appoint a planning inspector to examine the contents and the scope of the plan. So then the examination process is not due to start until 2026 at the earliest. So I can't firm anything up at the moment because the timetable is still to be agreed, but that's basically the current state of play as of today.
Just come back on that. On your website, you're saying we've responded on this timeline to 24th of September 2024. So consultations that have come in before the 24th of September. So are you holding those over then until the back end of next year? Or I clearly understand the process around adoption of a local plan. So how is it going to work with how you're going to give consideration to the consultation responses?
Sure, yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. So we will produce a statement of consultation which sets out a detailed summary of all the comments raised by respondents, and that will cover both previous stages as well as the last stage, which was the preferred approach consultation. And I will provide, a breakdown of what people said, different, from different stakeholders, and that will be made available at the next stage. So that we are going through the representations as we speak, with a view to then take them into account in how we shape the next version.
No, thanks for that, Philip. Can I suggest, Chairman, that at the stage that redrafting and the statement's done, that it comes back to this group so we can give consideration to it? Is that appropriate? Before it starts motoring off to wherever it's supposed to be, I think we ought to have consideration here. Is having briefings on it.
Yep.
That'd be helpful because our meetings are about every quarter, aren't they? So it'd be
Yeah.
to the next meeting then.
We're working directly with Philip, so when that's consolidated and ready for review and publication of that, we can work with the chair of the Strategic Officer Group to make sure it comes back onto a future agenda.
I've just got one on the. You said you went off the 2021, the capacity, or was it 2019? I can't remember now. And you didn't see a need for it. Obviously, there's going to be what 30,000 acres of solar panels kicking around. So there will be a need for recycling them at some point in time. And I imagine that some of them don't last as long as they're meant to. So if someone was put a plan application in for that, is it just used on that there's a need for that, or does it have to meet the old plan? Because it's obviously something that's not been considered from 2019, but it's considered now.
Yeah, I can respond to that. When we update the needs capacity assessment, one of the things we'll be looking at is the waste that comes from, all our major infrastructure schemes, solar panels and all the associated with nationally significant infrastructure projects and smaller projects, and take that into account in working out, based on assumptions, what our future capacity needs are, as well as cross-boundary movements, as mentioned before, and so on and so forth. So it will be a comprehensive piece of work, but we are definitely going to pick up the issues around wastage from things like solar parks and wind turbines and so on.
Thank you. Seeing no one else, I'll let you go, Philip, and thank you. We'll probably see you next time.
Yeah, look forward to it. Thanks for your time, everyone. Take care.
That being on item 5, which is partner updates. Steve and Kate, has anyone else got any updates from relevant districts? Go around the Okay. So I'll do the counties first then. So 4 things from us. We're going for the re-procurement of our bulk waste haulage contract. So that's the serving of our waste transfer stations to the EFW. Specification of the contract, tender document has been finalised and released shortly. That will be released to the market. As the current contract comes to end in April 2025, current contract has performed really well, so it's not envisaged there's going to be any significant changes to that contract. Other big news from us is we've opened our first reuse facility and shop at Tattershall Recycling Centre. It's been early days. We've only been open 6 days in total, but it's been a great success so far. The site's been set up with reuse points, so people can drop off items that are suitable for reuse. The staff check them for compliance, and then we put them in the shop for sale. We're not up to electrical items yet because we haven't got any at testing training done or a bench set up, but that is something we're looking at doing fairly soon. And so far in those 6 days, we've diverted 2,800 kilograms of material from recycling or energy from recovery. So yeah, it's been really, really positive.
for those few days that we're open. And then further into reuse, we're looking at opening a community repaint scheme at Grantham Recycling Centre. So the team are working on that at the minute. So it'll enable customers to bring in half-used tins of paint, put them into the facility that we're providing, and then people then can take them away and use them on their property. And that again will divert that material away from energy recovery. So that's something we're looking at trialling at Grantham and seeing how that goes, and hopefully if it's successful, we'll move on to our other recycling centres. The plan is that that'll be up and running next month. Yeah. And then lastly, for POPs, all of our recycling centres are now able to accept segregated POPs. 4 of our 5 waste transfer stations have been upgraded to have the segregated areas. We've just got Gainsborough to do, which is scheduled for the end of this month. So from December, we're all ready to comply with the Environment Agency requirements that come in for the segregation of the POPs, and we'll be able to hold that separately. That's everything from me. Thank you.
Excellent.
We have procured our food waste vehicles now, which will be staggered delivery over the next in 2025. Also, we've just been out for a full garden waste consultation where we got well over 7,000 responses to that consultation and asking the residents what they wanted the service to look like. We're just plating all that data at the minute, and I will update at the next meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, just to say the waste collection and street cleansing contract has now been let, to be signed off in on the 8th of November, and we're finalising the grounds maintenance specification to go out for expressions of interest later in October.
Stephen?
On Queen Street. So as you know, we had the relaunch which happened earlier in the year, and it's come to an end, and our contamination rates have fallen and are now in line with the rest of the other Lincolnshire authorities. So we're happy with that. Work is still ongoing to reduce contamination. We're having a particular problem around soft plastics, but again, we're tracking data and trying to bring that down further. So some good work there overall. We've also recently introduced the curbside battery collection. So we've done a soft launch on this, so it hasn't been as kind of headline hitting as other launches, but it started on Monday the 16th of September, and 735 kilograms were collected in week 1, which is outstanding. Since then it has petered off. It's dropped down to about 400 kilograms a week, and it continues to drop consistently, which is what we would expect to see as it settles down a bit. Each RCB has been adapted to include the, we've got an external battery storage unit which the workshop have created, which is really good. And residents are just being encouraged to place their batteries out on any bin, so put them in a bag, any bin, and the crews will pick them up, so it's not confusing for the residents in any way. It seems to be going really well, so I'll let you know. Final one from SK is just around commercial food waste collections. So just to let you all know that we do currently operate a successful commercial waste service, and with the mandatory commercial food waste collections coming in from next year, it might have some impact. So we are currently looking into the feasibility of offering a commercial waste service and when we're going to do it. It's unlikely that we roll it out in 2025 because our customer base is too small for the businesses that will be affected by the deadline. But by 2027, it's likely that a considerable customer base will be affected, up to potentially implement it in line with that deadline. Is it ready for this?
Boston, South Holland, Eastland, delivery level.
I'll take a lot of it. Boston first. So Boston we're continuing to tackle the fly tipping rates in Boston. There's been a lot of work with individual landowners and actually individual houses with the team, banging on doors, education. So great piece of work, really. Looking at that, we've got a new member of staff starting that was funded. It's been funded through the fly tipping grant, and they're in place now. I mean, part of their work is literally going around knocking on doors and trying to change behaviours and identify perpetrators. So that's positive. We've also been running a community skip trial in Boston. So that ran for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. 4 weeks. Quite interesting project. That was a trial which we're going to replicate in November in some different areas to see the impact of that. I think it's fair to say that it's been positively seen by members of the community, particularly those who live locally and can't access, for example, HWRC. So it'd be interesting to see the next version of it in November as to what in different locations, as to see what the feedback on that is then, and then we'll take a view on what we do with that moving forward. But lots of work going on in Boston to really try and tackle fly tipping. And I keep doing this. We are seeing again some reductions in numbers of fly tips that we're picking up, small amounts. But that belies really the considerable amount of work that goes on in the background to try and effect that. So I'm still working hard on that, I think is fair to say. In terms of so East Lindsey and Boston from the waste side, piece of work going on at the moment looking at the options for food waste collection. Do we go pod vehicles? Do we go separate collections? So that piece of work due to come to members, councillors for decision around November, December times. That's what we're expecting. Been to the workshop, the workshop in Workshop to look at the vehicles. I think the fleet group. As part of the county-wide working arrangements, went to have a look at the different vehicles down there, and I think it was quite interesting to see how the market is adapting food waste vehicles to demands of council. So really interesting to see that's still a moving feast. So from South Holland, been very exciting. We've I think I said last time that we were about to complete our consultation with the members of the community to see what the views were around the future of waste collection methods in South Holland. We had a huge response rate, nearly 9,000 respondents, which is phenomenal, really. I think the team that were doing the external team that were doing the consultation expected sort of 500 to 1,000. Well, you know, that's absolutely blown it away, and I think it just shows how important waste services are in our communities. So that's come to an end. All the information has been analysed now, and a report's coming our way. That will feed in to Cabinet, who will take the results of the consultation and everything else that comes into making decisions about waste, operational, financial. We all know what they are, and we've got some consultants modelling a number of different collection methods that will, including food waste, that will come to Cabinet for a decision at the end of the year in terms of moving forward. Just for information, the results of the consultation, really, really pleased to say that something like over 70% of residents were really wanted to recycle more. So for me, out of those 8,000, nearly 9,000 respondents, overwhelming majority want to do more, which is great as a spot check, if you like, across our community. Really, really positive. There was no real preference for how it was delivered in terms of bins or sacks. That came out, no real preference, which was interesting, I think. And the other interesting point was around the current satisfaction levels were high with the services, which is always good to know. And we also asked around if food waste came out, would alternate weekly collections be more palatable, really? That's the question. And I think what came out was yes. So clearly the food waste is as we know, it's the weekly collection that people kind of get it more concerned about, leaving food waste for longer. So yes, so all that is going into the melting pot, if you like, with all the information that we have at our disposal to give to Cabinet to make that decision moving forward as to where the future of South Holland's collection will look like. So interesting times with the food waste woven in as well. So yeah, interesting times. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Out of interest on the skip thing at Boston, have you seen a reduction in the flight ticket, or have you just seen it as basically seen it as a convenience, as opposed to sort of what you was trying to achieve?
I think there's definitely been an element of the convenience side. I mean, I know LCC said leave down and on at the last one to ask was residents why they were using it, and that threw up some very concerning points among others. Flight tipping for September is down year on year and month on month in Boston, about 40-ish, I think, 40 incidents, so about 10%. We believe that due to other work that we've got going on, we've got a scheme going on at the moment called Operation Clean Streets, where we're basically our enforcement guys are tackling a hotspot, say. So I know Granville Street, Sydney Street in Boston is a hotspot. We've had enforcement officers patrolling for 6 weeks in there intensively at evenings, weekends, during the day. And the guys have been clearing it every day. So currently, when we have a hotspot, we go every other day. So our flight ticket figures will say showing that we have 15 flight tickets, one every other day. What we found was that then went up to 29. So it artificially raised flight ticket figures that we've got to a certain extent. What we have seen because of that, though, is that the flight ticket figures have now dramatically reduced in these locations where we've been doing the intensive action, as well as the skips. So I don't know, one might be counteracting the other to a certain extent, if that makes any sense. So we think the skips are having a success. It's just being hidden behind the effects of these, what's the word? The more intensive work that we're doing with other things.
So it's the other. You're going to put some other skips out in other places. So
what we're going to do is, because it was always we were going to do 2 trials, one in August, September, one in November. So the November scheme, we're looking at changing the location for 2 weeks. I think we're looking at putting it in the cattle market in town, so that it's the other side of the river, so it's a bit more convenient for people. It's ideally we wanted it into our street, which backs onto one of our other hotspot areas of Wormgate and Red Line Street, but we can't access that car park because with the skip trucks. So we've got to go to the next nearest land that we own. We're taking on board comments that LCC have raised about contamination with the skip. So we're going to have all 4 skips instead of 2 and then replace them. We're just going to put 4 in and have 1, I think, for garden waste, 2 for general waste and 1 for furniture. And when they're full, they're full. And we'll see if that obviously makes a difference in terms of contamination. And ultimately, if more residents use it, but residents have loved it. I know that every person we've spoken to has really appreciated the service and the fact that it's convenient, it's easy to get to, the staff were friendly. And as I say, it's raised up some other issues that Rachel's aware of.
Yeah, I would be interested in that because there's long been arguments about you don't do this, but it caused flight tipping. I'd just be interested to know actually if it did stop the flight tip or whether it was just used because it was actually it's outside my door. I will use that.
We believe that out of, I think, what did we collect? 15, it was like 15 or 16 tonne of waste that's been collected over the 4-week period. And we believe it's probably stopped about 2 tonne being flight tipped. That's That's nothing scientific or anything like that. That's people literally walking around. We know we had one gentleman who was literally walking bags of rubbish around from his house as he was moving, and we had a strong belief that they were going to end up on the street. We had another gentleman who brought tyres, who then subsequently went on to flighted these tyres down at the country lane in the area. Ironically, was caught by the guy who was providing our skips. So
It was caught.
yeah. So
I think there's been we've done so much work, so much sort of real intervention work. We've worked with landlords, we've worked with estate agents, we've done so much. And I think it's just interesting to see out of everything we're doing, it's kind of not just one, it's kind of everything working together. And it's resource intensive, but we need to see the results of what we're doing. But I think the thing as well, the communities, you see from the community feedback, they can see we're trying everything at our disposal, including enforcement as well, which we've had some good enforcement cases as well.
yeah.
Yeah. I've got back on your point that there's some amazing work going on around county, and I know our environmental crimes group is working very hard with a lot of other agencies as well, the Police and Crime Commissioner and so on. But just looking at the sources of the problems. Are the fly tippers that you catch, do they tend to be local residents, or do they come from out elsewhere? The reason I say that is because in our experience, quite a few of the hotspots tend to be right on the edge of our districts. So right on the border, Beckingham, and most of them tend to come from like Nottinghamshire and Newark and that sort of area. And then we've got the A52 corridor, and looking at K, we've sort of worked quite closely on a lot of the people who sort of bring in that particular area. So, sort of from our point of view, sort of putting skips in North West England wouldn't actually reduce the fly tippers because they live elsewhere.
I think we've got quite a unique problem in Boston, in that with the large champion population that we have. I think about 80% of fly tippers that are caught are from the migrant community. There's just a number of reasons for that. In their country, they put bags by bins. They have central collection points. Some people, saying, "Oh, they're just lazy." It doesn't matter how much enforcement or education you do. Some people just won't listen. What we've found is through our education programme, though, that the bags by bins is dropping. It's gone down from 700 bags by bins at the start of the year, I think, to this month, about 350, which we're part of that, which is fantastic. But what we are seeing now is more large fly tips. So whether people are driving in and doing that, that's obviously, of course, concerning. So but what we've also found is that roughly 90% of our fly tips are in the town centre, which again mixes in with these overcrowded private rental properties where we've got the family residents moving in for 6 months, literally emptying the contents of their property or their room, in some cases, on the street and leaving. I think there's different problems for different areas, and obviously that's one of our main issues.
I think that's what close. So next one is working groups. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Most of the explanation is within the paper, but just a short summary. In terms of the health and safety group, some of the work on the automatic bin lifts as a result of a death, I think it was last year in Coventry, and some of the recommendations coming through the that make these bin lifts, and so local work includes safe working practices, vehicle upgrades, and such like. The health and safety group has also been doing a lot of work in supporting the food waste project, the food waste working group, which you'll probably hear from Chris in a later paper at this meeting, and that's work in terms of advice on vehicles and collection colleagues as well. Turning to the waste officer group, very similarly, a lot of work to support the work of the food waste subgroup and also supporting the communications effort, which I'm sure you'll hear soon regarding right thing, right bin. And then finally, the fleet group. Vic just touched upon some of the work in terms of the group scouting for looking at good practice in other areas such as workshop. They're looking at the methods of ordering of the food waste vehicles, as well as following on from the health and safety group, the safe loading of bins. Chairman, myself and colleagues are more than happy to answer any questions. Question? To 7, which is the waste communications day on Rachel.
Okay, so again, in the paper, you'll see that the communications group are really hard to come up with a plan and a strategy that we are rolling out really successfully across the county. We have set forward a set of episodes headings, and you'll see them listed in the plan. We are about to launch our 6th episode, which is about why can't we recycle things. So the topics of these have been taken very much from the public feedback that we get, but also with a focus on waste minimisation, because we know that's running through as a thread through everything that we're doing. As a result, in terms of some of the high level statistics, in terms of these video messages that are primarily going out on social media, the last one that we put out reached over 17,000 people, which was around where does recycling go. We'll be doing one for each of the waste streams. This one that we'll be producing with Chris, who's in the corner. He's the guy in the pink T-shirt, which everybody seems to know him now nationally as well as anything else. Has gone down really well, and we've got some really good information in there around why we can't recycle and what we could do alternatively, and that feeds us into the next one. So that's been really positive and is ongoing, and we'll be pulling together. Obviously, later in October is National Recycling Week, so the information for that has been released nationally. So we're pulling together how we do that as a coordinated approach. And the other big piece of work really around communications is the food waste communications trial that we're just about to undertake. So there's approximately 80, and they are members of staff that we have recruited between LCC and NK. Are all getting a household food waste caddy of the sort of similar size that we're getting. It's a lot, just a lot in there now. I've moved it. A food waste diary, so that we start to understand some of the behaviours. Because whilst RAP have pulled together a common strategy for food waste, it is very much one size fits all. And we're keen to understand household makeup, what the messaging needs to be, and making sure that we can bespoke that quite well. So this is going to take us well into the new year. So we capture anomalies. We'll be looking at weights. We'll be looking at what sort of things people throw away. We'll be looking to get feedback from people who go, I just didn't bother. So we've got a section in there about what didn't you put in the food waste caddy and why, so that we can start to understand some of that. So that's going to start next week. Across all being collated, so we'll be able to give you an update of that in the next LWP meeting, at least the first analysis of it, which I think is in the new year. So that's going to be good, and it will inform a strategy that we share with everybody going forward.
Love the videos though, and they are very well presented. Absolutely outstanding job. Thank you.
I'm going to get him another T-shirt because I think the white's faded a little bit on that one.
Fix it in post.
Jen, can I just ask, how are we using the information from previous pilots on food waste to help inform if there's been some changing behaviours, or if there's been, learnings from previous pilots?
So we do still have the data in the output survey from South Esteem as well, which has been very much where we've tailored our initial surveys and questionnaires, taking that into account. And I think you're quite right, it's about taking the analysis, it's behaviour change, it's not just comms that's going to inform our participation. So we have that data, we have the national data as well. We've now
Is it posted anywhere else about it? Sure, just SK.
Just SK.
Was it?
Yeah. And we're now, obviously we've got our off-taker in place. We've done a lot of work in education, so we're working with them. They've helped us create the content for this as well to understand that behavioural change. And I think it's very much, when you look at some of the national collateral that's out there, it's very much about, don't buy this, don't do that, and it's aimed at one demographic, and we know that we've got pockets of the county that are very different, so we need to tailor that messaging. So it's very much about, it's your family, when when you buy this and buy these in multi-packs, or only buy what you need, but actually there's nothing in there tailored to single people, for argument's sake, or looking more at the elderly. So we've got a cross section, and we've got staff who've pulled their parents and their in-laws and etc. onto this trial, so we understand some of their behaviours to learn from that. So the demographics will also be mapped against the findings as to people's behaviours, so we understand that.
Is what being done to work with the, say, migrant community, so we can put stuff be translated and stuff like to make it easier for them to understand the message.
So in the same way as we did the right thing, and in particular in Boston, we had 7 different translations. We'll be working with your comms people around what you need that in. So we've devised a trial leaflet as well. So we want feedback from participants and on that, and I'm happy to share the electronic version of that after this as well. But again, I've already had a conversation with Emma staff about how you would put that into multiple languages going forward. But just picking back up on what you said around blighting thing, the cultural differences will make this very different. So the learnings from this, we may then say, actually, where else do we need to go and do something to understand behaviours?
On the food waste, on the content of food waste, are we going to start sort of picking that up a little bit in the next year? So it's sort of building to people's heads, ready for when they're presented with it.
So it's already gone into the county news brief that this is coming. The rep, as I say, in the last 2 months have released a draft communication strategy and timeline. And yes, we'll be starting to feed all of this now. We've definitely got it on our comms plan as a future one. Food waste is coming, and we'll do a little tour of the AD facility with Chris in his pink t-shirt as well. Show people what happens to that under this morning.
I presume
Obviously continue that. They'll want to maximise any participation so that they don't fall down in the league table. So the discussions are happening at a national level. We're going over to LARAC next week to look at some of those. So don't want to reinvent the wheel, but I'm also really keen that we don't just pick up what's given to us nationally and drop it into Lincolnshire. We work hard, don't we, to make sure that it's right. And that's why we're doing this, to understand our Lincolnshire residents.
I'm supposed to have them this week, and have cancelled it. But the last one, the Business Readiness Forum, they were talking about how the food waste are going to start communicating the businesses into, well, they were saying early next year for 2025. So my point really was that we need to be aware that that's going to go out to businesses, don't we? Because that will form more calls.
Yes.
And then we haven't heard anything yet, but we have been asking for DEFRA to do a national comms campaign because this is for everybody. So they need to do something from a national level to either push, help those that are already doing the food waste service, but also to support us and everyone else like us that's bringing it in. But I haven't heard anything about that yet. But
We've asked the questions again, and it was on my list ready for DEFRA's, which I say, forum. And you're right, we need something that hits the national TV that says that this is coming in. It's all well and good that RAP are producing some of the materials for us, but until somebody says you need to do this, that will be the most powerful message that we can then back up with our bespoke, localised messaging.
And interestingly, at the consultation we did in South Holland, there were quite a few people coming forward, weren't they, saying, "Oh, I've just moved from Norfolk, and we've done it," and really sort of not looking forward to it, but not a problem.
No,
You know,
no. I've spoken to a few people. Got somebody on the trial, somebody's parents who I was speaking to the other day, who said they've not long since lived here, and they find it a real backward step to put their food waste into their residual bin.
Performance update.
Sent Tom Flies, he's just going to pop onto the screen for us. So in terms of performance update for quarter 1, so April, May and June, the validated data, we'll just have quarter 2s come out. So the next slide, please, Tom. So in terms of the 4 metrics that we report out, our first one's around household waste collected. So this is saying that we had in quarter 1 270 kilograms per house with a target of 280 for that first quarter. So that's good, because it means that we're higher up the waste hierarchy there in terms of minimisation. We're within that target, less waste and therefore less haulage as well. So that was a positive. The next one, please, Tom. In terms of recycling rate, the cumulative data so far said that within Q1 we have a recycling rate of 44.69% against a target of 50%. Obviously, the recycling rate, similar to last year for quarter 1, is impacted a lot around green waste and around what's presented to us. Nationally, the average at this point is 44.1% as well. I think once we have the initiatives around simpler recycling, in particular food waste, we'll be looking to increase that by at least 7% based on the projections of tonnages that we've got. So that's a positive, and that the 50% target has been enforced for us as long as I am aware, there or thereabouts. So we're making moves in there, but again, a lot of it is dictated by green waste. It's a big chunk of the recycling that we are presented with. The next slide, please, Tom, then, is the recycling at the household waste recycling centres. So in quarter 1, we had a 74.1% achievement against a target of 75%, with a projection of the year to hit target at 75%. Again, same impacts around climatic factors take into account at the HWRCs. The work that we're doing, as Chris mentioned, at the reuse shop as well, will help us push that figure further up as we go forward. Touched on, it's only one of 11 sites that we've got. Looking forward, we'll be seeing how that will feed into that measure and increase the performance for the county. And the final figure that we report on the next slide, Tom, please, is around household waste to landfill. Quarter 1, again, we have a 5% target for the year. Quarter 1, we were 0.15%, with a projected forecast of 0.38% by the end of the year. This is the second year that we've been at this sort of level at Q1. Last year, we worked very hard to divert waste away from landfill, primarily from when the energy from waste has its outages planned or otherwise. So we're now working to secure alternative energy recovery facilities. So we'll look to do that. So we'll be reviewing that target at the end of the year. That's a really important one. That's the one that makes me smile at the end of the year at the moment, to be able to say that we put.
Beat it.
Sorry?
We beat the target.
We beat it, but actually the other thing to say is the tonnage that has gone in there has not been tonnage collected from curbside. No curbside materials, and the whole of last financial year in the first quarter went into landfill. So that's a real achievement and one that we need to be proud about. What I don't have a slide for, but I can give you a verbal update, is in terms of the quality of the recycling materials. For quarter one, for the 5 districts that rolled into twin stream, we have achieved a 91% quality, so approximately 9% of the recycling out of the 2 waste streams, the mixed dry recycling and paper and card, was contamination. In the 2 areas where we haven't yet done any of that work, we're seeing an average 22% contamination. So we can see the impact of separating out that fibre is having on the overall quality of the recycling that we're collecting by tonnage. We've been working hard as well with Mid-UK, and they're looking in terms of the future markets for soft plastics in line with simpler recycling for 2027, which again will have an impact because we class that as non-target material, so contamination at the moment. So we'll be looking as that to improve our recycling rate as well when we go further forward. But I think it's Kay mentioned in her update from South to Stephen, it's been a task, but actually you see the qualitative data that's coming out now and the materials that we are collecting at the transfer stations and moving on. And it's another one that makes me smile, and it's a really good performance to be able to see that. But yeah, 9%, so 91% quality as opposed to 78% where we haven't yet done any of that twin stream right thing, right bin work.
Might be a bit of a thick question. What waste does go to landfill then if it's not curbside?
It could be fly tips, it could be hazardous waste, it could be bulky waste, and potentially some mattresses at the moment.
That's a question and more a comment based on our experience. Those figures are really, really helpful in winning a ground war and the communications war on why we are doing what we are doing. The most common comment on Facebook is, well, it's just going into landfill anyway. So we're still quite in that rear guard action of nothing from curbside goes into. But what we saw when we had our second rollout, getting that big headline figure, and Rachel very helpfully providing that to us month by month by month, adding that to our own comms strategy really helped drive home the point of this is making a difference. We've gone from 37% down to 8%, and that's thanks to you. Aren't you all great? Thank you very much. And that has helped that acceptance rather than the opposition that can come with change.
A couple of bits on the national recycling figures. CP's 44%. We've got collection authority picking up things in different. You know, we put it in a bin predominantly, whereas they go around and some places different containers for textiles, glass. That'll increase their recycling rate. No, won't it? And this is the difficult one to square up because we've got recycling banks and everything else that we cannot count, but we are actually recycling a lot of stuff that the other places are, but we just can't account for it.
Yeah. So anything that's not coming through the waste disposal authority, so like you say, the clothing banks that are in communities and that sort of thing, don't count within our disposal figures at this point. And it's when you look at the national recycling rates and you look at the top 10 performers and you go out and you look at their collection methodologies, so curbside sort, you look at their frequencies, which might be different, you look at the demographic, which is different, you look at the size of the authority, you look at the vehicles, you look at the infrastructure. So it's never a measuring apples with apples. So it's a really hard one when all somebody says is the headline number that's promoted that says you're, you know, number 325 in the table or whatever it might be, not that we are. But, you know, so it's really hard because what we don't have then is that same information. And it's like the qualitative data. We were talking to some people who were telling us, oh, really, really low contamination. But then when you understand the process of what part of the process it's sampled in, how many times it's been handled, the proportions, there's never an apples and apples. So national league tables are often misleading.
So will that ever be?
The
It's difficult.
The discussions carry on at all the forums and at DEFRA and around the collection methodologies, and we would have liked to have seen some consistency, wouldn't we, in terms of consistency?
And I'm just going to add that should be an asterisk against those that have a free garden waste collection.
Yeah.
So if you think of the tonnage and the impact on tonnages on recycling rates of garden waste, it's garden waste. It's
It's massive, isn't it? Yeah, it's massive. And again, you could chart that in terms of the cost as well, couldn't you? Those with the cheaper ones will have more people participate.
That's why really it's probably with garden waste, you could say it's like Holland. The district doesn't get it, but it goes on to the county recycling rate type thing that takes
It fits into the overall. Some of it does. Yeah, some of it's.
It's one more. It's coming back to what you said as well with the 5 district rollouts. Where are we on Lincoln and South Holland? I thought we was meant to be somewhere
at this point. So that's what if you've got any update. I know we've been talking to Steve, he's been talking.
A paper is being put together now. Steve's put the paper for exec to consider on paper and card. We're also looking at tackling bins on the streets at the moment and contamination ahead of that. But, it's in the process of being considered, definitely.
So on the programme, the next one that was due to go, if you like, would be City of Lincoln. So we will need to do that. And even if paper and card, it is around that qualitative information and that hard steering the right thing in the right bin and not collecting contaminated bins and everything that goes with that. We know about that one.
I'm sure your inbox is big enough.
Can I just ask about what do you mean by for executive to consider? Start.
Well, yeah, essentially.
Not whether they'll do it or.
No, I don't think there's a question of us not doing it. I think it's just a matter of when we introduce it, along with the other things that we've got to do. But yeah, it's just the timing of it, I think.
Because if there's going to be a big delay, delays the finalisation of the county rollout, doesn't it?
It does, and it also impacts in terms of the qualitative information that we've got, because we obviously provide a county-wide qualitative measure, which at the moment is sitting at around about 17.5%, 18% contaminant. But actually, we know that if we get all 7 districts collected in the same way, we'll be able to report an in excess of 90% quality material, and that obviously impacts the amount that we can get them to buy in, we can get people to recycle more and minimise as well.
Is South Holland still okay for 25?
It was due to be, we were due to have been going into 25 in the original programme.
I think the mandatory food waste collections affected that, hasn't it, in terms of how we roll that out. But the work that is going on in South Holland at the moment is literally looking at the models, different models. So things like alternate weekly collection, all of that will be modelled and then brought back for decision on which way to go forward.
South Holland is a bit like the change it once.
Well, that's the question we've had, because if you're tagging food waste on, then you still have to go and engage with everybody, which has got to do on the communications. So it's probably better to do whatever you're doing all at once. And I think one of the reasons we went out, wasn't it, for the survey, was to say to residents, this gives us an opportunity to look at how we've been collecting waste in South Holland for a number of years, and actually it's an opportunity for change, and which way do we want to change, where we're going to go. So it's kind of just putting that story through, but the data, the information that we get from Rachel's team, that all feeds in to that decision making process. So it's going to be a big decision.
Yeah.
Won't be here next year. I wouldn't say choose your mayor over it. Yeah, but it's a bit of fun. It's a word, mate.
Gaslighting.
I think we're happy to continue working though with you, Vic, on that because we're seeing through some capacity issues we're having with our energy from waste and sort of the whole waste minimisation thing that we're looking at with other legislation changes on in the future around energy from waste facilities. I think, yeah, some of the changes are going to be really important going forward to enable to meet some of the requirements.
That all feeds in.
Yeah.
But we'll, we catch up anyway, don't we? So we can.
Thanks, Chairman. I'll sort of back up that conversation about sort of the performance statistics. They're very difficult to capture to give a picture of exactly what's going on. So there's a lot of context and lots of local nuances to what's going on. And it's almost, as you said, it's a constant conversation, isn't it, around what best captures the picture within Lincolnshire. And hopefully we've got it as best as we can, but we always open to sort of suggestions as to how that does. But ultimately, when you're looking at sort of national figures, it doesn't take into account those nuances and quite how well people are doing things. I like to think that we do pretty well in Lincolnshire in terms of that that vehicle of change that we've had in the last few years and will continue to have. The other bit is with regards to the flight of them. We touched about sort of the composition of what goes into the landfill and sort of it being fly tips and pops and so on. And looking at our incredibly low figures, is it the case that it would be incredibly difficult? I wouldn't say impossible, but incredibly difficult to get that to zero. Sort of taken on board that communications about it's so easy to sort of say, oh, it goes to landfill. It doesn't, but will it ever be the case that it never goes to landfill?
With the idea.
It's the aspiration, isn't it, to ultimately get to zero, but unfortunately some of the materials that come are so mixed together that incredibly difficult to segregate, and unfortunately landfill sometimes is the only option.
Because of the way that everything's siloed outside of local government, so everybody's got competing priorities, and I'm banging my head about what's happening with flooding, and it doesn't seem to be moving on at all. I did wonder, because hopefully we know that once there's flooding, unfortunately, I won't name them in this meeting, there's at least one agency saying that we're potentially going to have a 40% wetter winter this year, which means we are going to see flooding again, that's guaranteed. Have we measured before the increase in usage of the HWRC? Because everything that comes out of a household is contaminated, it has to go straight to waste. And if not, can we do that this year so we can see the impact of flooding on our waste services as well as anything else?
It's not something that I'm aware we have done in the past. I'm aware that we have extended like the opening hours and stuff like that, or open on specific days if there's a community that has been severely affected. But I think that's definitely something we have a look into, see if there's any data. Or
and we now, in terms of the HWRC contracts that we run, we have a monthly service report in terms of tonnages. So what we can do is overlay that with a map in terms of severe floods and understand in real time at the end of the following month the impact that it's had on there. And I'll add that into our contract management reviews that we have with the two off-takers. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. 91% is an outstanding result, it really is. Just to complete the circle of it all goes to landfill, the 9%, does any of that, if any of that, goes to landfill?
No.
Not?
No, so the off-takers who take the contamination out, whether that be mid-UK palm, that goes into energy recovery, into RDF as well. So none of that's put into our landfill.
Sorry, I was just on the previous point. So when we've unfortunately had flooding incidents, what we've done in East Lindsey is actually just skips in, because the household, the residents who are affected need it out now. there then, we need to get it out, put it somewhere. And we've tried to support with refuse collection vehicles, that brings challenges. We've tried to support with gauges from the street side. They can help to some degree in terms of lifting bridges, that kind of thing. But the majority of it's been in private contractors coming in, skip there, and everyone just planning it in. And so I think some has come through to county. I know you've always been very helpful with, opening up to let us run in and stuff, but the majority of that, I would say, does people come through.
So I think it's probably around, if we do have these instances, it's about us maybe chairing something quite quickly in terms of that emergency response, so that we at least know how much of it is going through county and going through private contractors, finding a mechanism to record that. And again, there's also sometimes a time lag, because whilst residents want it out, their insurance companies won't let them take it out. And
Something to the officer working with them to coordinate that all the information is gathered, because I think it's massive.
Possible just to get if it's offered as a deputy clerk, is it possible to put a revised timeline of the rollout?
do you know when that's going to executive council, Charlotte?
Well, eminently so, early November, I think, if not late October.
So as soon as we've got that, I'll take a note to it. If you could ask Steve to let us know,
Yeah.
and I'll circulate an email to everybody to give an update around the rollout programme, because I'm conscious that we won't be meeting as a group again until next year.
Any more? Any question? No. Waste Partnership draft family report.
Chairman, thank you very much. So the report focuses on the content of the draft annual report rather than the presentation. That's because there's still quite a bit to do in terms of the document to become really attractive. And thank you very much to Rachel and to Chris and your team for the offer to prepare that and to look towards publishing it. Just some context, last year the publication was shared electronically with partners and also published on the LWP pages hosted on the LCC website. So Chairman, myself and colleagues, happy to answer any questions.
Chairman, I think it's a great position statement of where we are, isn't it? So thank you for the team that's pulled this together. I suppose being here as kind of the chief exec and Richard being here as the leader, do we need to do anything with this to get it into that leader chief exec forum to understand the success around the Lincolnshire Waste Partnership? And I suppose, because I've been off for 3 months, I don't think, Richard, you've got some ideas on that.
It does. The problem we've got at the moment is it's been competing priorities, hasn't it? So this, I think, has slipped a little bit. We need to get it back up there, because if I was to dare to mention the D word about everybody working together going forward, this should be a good example of how we work together, not something that's we're still trying to get attention on. So if something can be put together, then me, I'll quite happily push it up.
Shall we put it on the agenda for the next chief exec leaders meeting? Yeah. And you did go do it and take press or something.
We're talking rubbish again.
I didn't say that. Possibly comment, but I just think it'd be good for to raise it there again, because they did want updates, didn't they, previously around the different policies of DEFRA and things like that. So I think it'd be quite useful to heighten the awareness of what we're doing.
It wasn't ready for last.
Pardon?
We did ask for something last time. It wasn't ready on a waste issue, so it would be good now to be able to present something, show a position statement on where we are.
Did something on the waste transfer sites, didn't we?
Yes, I did a food waste
There
project.
was a paper on the waste transfer site. That must be 3 months ago now. But we've not done the success of looking backwards and how affected the partnership itself, have we?
we'll work to get the finalised version and a deadline in terms of it looking nice. I'll work with Chris and the team to understand when we're going to be able to get that done for, and then that can come through to you. I don't think it'll be long.
Food waste update. Oh, Chris. Self, yeah. Okay. I'll crack on. Okay, so at the last LWP, we had the RAC review and the workshop. So following on from that, we'll continue to make good progress towards the deadlines that are laid out by central government for the segregated food waste collections. So for the county, we've entered into a contract with Biotech 4, who operate a number of anaerobic digestion facilities in the region, with the majority of our waste planned to go to the site at Hemswell Cliff, and some going just slightly over the border to March in Cambridgeshire. We've got a series of site visits planned to Biotech. Hopefully you should be getting some invites if you haven't already. We've gone. So it'd be a good opportunity to go around that facility at Hemswell Cliff. It's a really impressive facility. So yeah, if you get the opportunity, I'd encourage everybody to attend. On our transfer stations, we have an appointed contractor who will work through the modifications. At the minute, we've done some pre-application advice on a couple of our facilities. So we're finalising the designs, looking to submit plan applications in late 24, early 2025. We're continuing to discuss with a number of landowners in the Greater Lincoln area for the requirement for the new waste transfer station. So that's still progressing. However, due to probably the timescales it will take to fully develop that site, we're looking at an interim arrangement for securing the City of Lincoln's food waste tipping point, and that should be in place for April 2026. The Senior Officer Working Group have been working collaboratively with the Officer Working Group and the Health and Safety Group, and we're in the position now to recommend a joint partnership approach for both internal and external caddies. We've taken the advice that we received from RAP. We've had visits to all the local authorities, plus advice to our Health and Safety Group. And we're looking for the external caddies to be the 23 litres, exact exhibit A. However, we are looking to go for a black body with an orange lid. The internal caddies are the 5 litres and they're silver and grey. So the colour choices, they're aimed to, as Mitch talked about earlier, it's the consistent communication strategy throughout the partnership, but also the orange lids to help with visibility throughout the darker months for both the collection crews, but also the pedestrians walking around on the footways. They're quite small at that sort of knee height. And that's something we've experienced. We're going to see all the local authorities that have been collecting them. We'll continue to review a joined up procurement strategy with Procurement Lincolnshire, and that work is still progressing. We've had effective communications with the anaerobic digestion provider Biotech regarding the most efficient caddy liners for their facilities. They've detailed that the facility can handle any type of liner. Effectively, that liner is removed from the debagging process at the very, very front end of the facility. So at the minute we are working with officers, we're requesting different samples of different types of liners. So far we've looked at some of the compostable ones, but they seem to be of very poor quality. Just awaiting some more samples from other providers, including all the costs. And then lastly, we've got the food waste trial, but Rachel's already told you all about that. So that's where we are up to at the minute with food waste. Take questions.
One question. We was asked quite a lot of times about the bags that are worn in them, and some people were saying where they came from, they can put any bag in, like a Tesco bag, whatever bag. Is that right? Yeah, so they could.
That's right.
Yeah. So we don't. And the other thing was, we're going to be supplying these bags, or are they going to supply their own bags, or are they going to be buying the bags?
I think it's still very much up for debate. I mean, we heard from RAP of the importance of the liners and participation. So the evidence gathered from all other areas that have food waste is the provision of liners is key to that success rate.
that for the districts to buy then?
So it's entirely up to a district, the WCA discussion as to whether you provide or don't provide.
But I think we're still waiting out with DEPA on the sort of the detail of the next funding allowances, which we're presuming to hear back potentially after the budget.
What's the cost on the liners?
We're still getting all the different costs per unit at the minute, so we're requesting samples and items from all the different providers at the moment. So we're trying to collate them all together to.
Assuming the biodegradable and stuff like that then.
You've got different options. You've got compostable, biodegradable, or single-use plastic. However, they're taken out at the very front stage of the process. That material never reaches the digest state that then goes to be spread on the land. So really, being compostable isn't really.
So somebody takes the cavity, takes the bag out of it, empties the contents, and then what do they do with that? Just throw that?
No, they put the
bag
straight into the external liner.
And then when it goes off to the anaerobic digestion facility at the front end, they have a bag grabber and it takes it out. So Karen, I'm not saying the dates we've got for visits as well, if you want to come on to it and have a look, but they take those out and all of them. And I think we had a big discussion at the last LWP, didn't we, about the amount of microplastics from the biodegradables and how much gets into the land in the first place. So there is it's not been mandated, the type of liner. There isn't a lot of evidence as such out there at the moment around which is best or not. And there's a lot of people waiting at the moment, and the funding coming through to WCAs for ongoing revenue costs isn't clear whether it will cover liners or not. So it's a local authority correction.
As we know that without the liners, that ick factor is going to provide a significant barrier to adoption. Genuinely, people aren't going to want to get their slimy potato peels and out of the bin, and it is going to cause a smell issue with the internal bin. The whole thing is this has to be really easy, really hygienic, really convenient for people to use. On a personal note, I am yet to be convinced that biodegradable bags actually biodegrade in the real world. So they might do it in a 45 degrees in a perfectly humid compost facility, but on my patch at the back of my garden, it's not going to happen. So that there isn't really an ecological benefit to biodegradable versus non-biodegradable if we're going to end up both. And that's as agreed, as you know.
Who's going to stand up and say they're ordering new plastic bags in the era when they're trying to get
exactly?
Yeah, just my point, absolutely that essentially the process that we're going to be going through, the debagging process, will take that bag and then put it in energy recovery anyway. So no matter what receptacle that you use, that's the issue. The other thing as well about compostable bags, they degrade quite quickly during the summer periods, and therefore that ick factor that was mentioned before, you'll certainly get that, and it's whether or not that impacts their take home versus single-use plastics. So it's a big dilemma that I think this forum needs to get to the bottom of.
Can I just ask as well, are we not falling? I know we're waiting to this, but we're falling for a market-driven, market-led, market-forced situation. Because years ago, I was composting my food when I had a bigger garden because I used to put it in my compost bin, which is, do you know what? I had a cabin without a line on in my kitchen because it had a carbon field at the top. Yes, I had to rinse it out once in a while, which meant a small amount of food waste went into general waste because a tiny amount. But I didn't have any trouble with lime because the carbon fields there. Yeah, we've now come back up with hard plastic buckets with plastic bags, which seems to be a retrograde step.
I think, yeah, but all the evidence that's coming from our colleagues at FRAP, it is that ick factor. It's the convenience of being able to take that bag out, put it in your liner, and there's been other authorities we're speaking to. Peterborough, they provided the liners initially, then they withdrew that service and they saw an absolute, it fell off a cliff, and then they had to reintroduce that to reinvigorate the service. So I think liners are really key. I don't think there's any perfect solution. So it's picking the best one, and as the facility takes out whatever liner you put in it at the first place, it does make compostable. We know we have issues with quality, that they tear, they break down very quickly. Biodegradable's got the risk that there's microplastics will maybe get into that digest state. So it's looking like single-use plastics is probably the best solution, which is it's difficult to take in this scenario. But if that material is removed at the front end, then that might be the best solution.
Just say though that as obviously householders themselves, we buy our own bags for our general waste anyway. So I don't see, if I'm about to be a dad next week or so, I know I'm going to be buying nappy bags. So yes, you buy the bags if you need them. So I think if you don't offer it from the offset to a certain extent, I think maybe Peterborough, because it was offered and then rescinded, they've gone, oh well, we're not doing it anymore. Whereas if you just don't offer it from the start, maybe.
But I think that's been looked at with
Every
RAP.
authority with RAP where they don't have liners provided either from the outset or afterwards, their participation rate is an awful lot lower.
We'd be able to get figures on that. Not because I'm disputing them, but I think again it makes that common strategy when we start rolling it out in our.
Yeah, I can get Ruth to send the slide that she used last time. I think probably had it as well. We've shared it with Victoria at some point, so I'll have a look. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Actual future waste problem. Yeah, if I could take the action plan updates and future waste reforms together, I think we've heard quite a bit about the actions that are being carried out at the moment, which help contribute to the action plan update, which is great for that. I think when we're looking at the challenges in the future, that becomes a bit scary, I would suggest. We've had little by way of government publications regarding the environment access plan. So a lot of the actions that we've been taking so far as officers within the partnership has been on the basis of advice shared at the last meeting and some of the RAP baseline information that was provided to members at that particular point. Some other bits and pieces that have come to light in the meantime, the EPR section of the paper gives some details on the illustrative base fees. That's including those for Cornick's dry recycling materials collected curbside in Lincolnshire and other materials. We've received some confirmation from DEFRA about a new circular economy task force that's coming online. We don't know much more information about that, but that's some new information. The energy emissions trading scheme was covered in the paper at the last LWP meeting. We do know some of the potential impacts now by some work that the LGA have done alongside DCN and CCN. The key to that is that the fossil derived waste being burned in Lincolnshire's residual stream. So this links into, kind of the motivation to collect that food waste. In Lincolnshire, the proportion of that is just over 40%, which from that work by the LGA and some of the sampling that they've carried out is towards the higher end compared to other local authorities. So we do need to look towards tackling that. The big scary figures that were shared at that meeting, the annual net cost pressure for local authorities 2028, higher estimate is around about £543 million. When you're looking at the industry as a whole, though, you're talking about billions of pounds over the next few years. So the impacts of the emissions trading scheme are going to be immense for us. The conclusion of which is that our work on engagement, on communications, the projects that we're delivering at the moment those are the ways that we're going to be able to mitigate those risks in the future. We need to avoid recyclable materials being incinerated and fossil fuel derived waste being incinerated in order to not be penalised through the emissions trading scheme and to maximise those extended producer responsibility payments that we're likely, hopefully, going to be getting in the future. Chairman, more than happy to take any questions.
Certainly not.
That's thank you for that. That's the last item, which is the forward plan.
We have the next meeting booked for the 6th February 2025. And we have 4 standing items for the programme: forms update, JMWMS progress update, working group briefing, and regulatory updates.
Anyone?
Chairman, can we have the waste presentation?
Yeah.
I don't know if I raise it here or not. Basically, I've had a complaint made about the signage for that household waste recycling centre. It's not being clear. But particularly with the discussion on that.
Yeah, we'll sort that out. It's just that particular one site.
I don't know. I'm assuming so.
Yeah, if there's any details on that, yeah, let us know. We have just put a couple, well, within the last 12 months, we've put some repeater signs in. So I think Sleaford had an extra highway sign put in, and also the signs at Boston and had a repeater sign in as well. So we've gone through our highways department and had that put in with the recycling logo in the recycling centre. So you're happy to pick up on any issues.
It's been raised bit about, I mentioned it earlier as well, about tyres and being able to accept them at the household waste recycling centre. I know North Lincolnshire, North East Lincolnshire, they accept up to 4. It's one of the issues now that obviously people do their own mechanics to a certain extent. You can buy a tyre online, change your tyre, and then what do you do with it? Because it's not trade waste if it's your own tyre.
Some garages still accept them. They're people trying to circumvent the system, aren't they? If you go to a garage, it costs you £2.50 tyre to have them disposed of it. They're trying to put that cost onto us. That's the way we should look at it. And why is that right? That they put the cost onto the local authority to dispose of where they're trying to make things cheaper.
The local authority is ultimately, I dare say, going to be the one responsible for clearing it anyway. So they'll just go and fly ticket down the lane. As I said earlier.
People are buying online, aren't they, and doing it themselves. I think this is the issue. It's people, non-mechanical people, professionals doing it themselves.
I take your point.
But then, to be fair, non-mechanical people, very unusual that you have a wheel machine.
Yeah, just put the cart to the
garage. So the problem, I suppose, it's a slippery road, isn't it?
I know through my profession as a postman, I know I deliver them to just general houses. So
and then they'll be going to somebody to get that tyre put on. As you say, you get a rim setting piece of equipment under pressure. I'm an ex-technique, so I've done those things. So you've got to have a setup to be able to put a car tyre on and do all the balancing and everything. So where are they going? Because it's those people that will say, no, you take your tyre back with you that you bought online, like your old one. So that's the people that should be here, not the local authority. Because they've got set up. Obviously, I know where you can go and get tyres back. I know you can do that without going through a mainstream garage. But they're the ones that should be picking up the cost of recycling the tyres.
Do you want to pick up on it? Or my own view is it's the problem is if you allow them, you just open the door for people to start businesses.
It's a household waste recycling centre for household waste, and that's come from a car. So in my opinion, it doesn't class as as household waste. And I think you're right, Danny. I think once you let something like that into the facility, then commercial traders are going to be looking for all the waste streams to be brought on at the expense of the taxpayer, which, we're there to provide household waste services, and it's a constant battle that we have with traders and commercial waste at the recycling centres anyway. And I think that could just exacerbate that issue.
I think last time I got it, so there was about £1 each.
I know it's not expensive, but I'm just, just raising it.
Yeah.
So obviously, as I say, we get unloads of tyres dumped down country lanes and whatnot. I'm just trying to think of ways to prevent it from happening to start with, because as I say, ultimately we end up paying to clear it. But I take your point, it is a car, it's not a household, but then
I think the other point with
if it's in the garden waste, that's not part of my house, is it? It's in the garden. So
yeah, I think the other point with the like you just said, you go down the road and someone's tipped a load, you tend to find that, but it's that many has to be a business a lot of the time. You do get the odd one or two, but I know from it used to happen in East Lindsey quite a bit at certain points. And it just used to be a van or whatever, and someone just should go out.
Yeah.
You never, unless you find them, you're never going to stop that. But if you say allow 4 into a site, you've got someone with wants to get rid of 100, haven't you?
I don't know the size of the problem, I suppose. I don't know if we've got any data around how many, is it a localised problem in Boston? Or is it something across the board? Because I don't know what the data, I mean, we've got flight tipping, without a doubt, but I don't know if we've got the data to say how many of those are tyres. And if we don't know the size of the problem, then we don't know what the action that comes from the problem, I would suggest. So have we got, I don't know, looking at officers, do we actually collect, when we collect the data on the fly tip, do we say 2 tyres, 4 tyres, 10 tyres?
We've started doing it solely because obviously
Yeah, I mean, that's it. If we haven't got the data, you make the decision blind. So it'd be worth doing a bit of data crunching to see what the fly tips are giving us. Yeah. Yeah. So let's have it on the forward plan for the data on tyres.
So do you want this for the next?
Yeah.
So we get it for the next meeting,
Yeah.
you think?
Could I make a suggestion, Chair, that we, if we're going to be just talking about this, it might be useful just to have an update on Borough crimes in general and where we are with that. I know that we haven't sort of engaged with that group for a little while.
Get the chairman to come up and give an update.
She could.
I know she will, from me as well. But we can always ask Aisha to come along and give us an update on flight tipping and other things that are going. That'd be great. I also put on the forward plan about feedback from chief execs and leaders. I think it'd be good if Richard did an update on how.
You get to keep creating work for me.
Was that? Site visits. If I didn't know, are the site visits arranged? Did you say?
We've arranged the ones for biotech, so if I have some dates, Karen, and my apologies, I didn't invite you.
So it might be worth us having a bit of a one pager on those if there's anything that we've got concerns about, or
Certainly, if the leaders and chief executives would like to go to any of the sites, if somebody comes to me, I can arrange any of those as well.
I don't think the lead. I don't know if the leaders and chief executives want to. I don't.
The offer is there if you would like to.
I look really good in a hard hat, so couldn't pass.
So Zoom.
That's the word.
I've got to work with her, I couldn't possibly comment.
Anything else? Is it?
Conversation, isn't it?
Right, meeting closed. I want to carry on in here rather than